I call this meeting of Lake Mary Toastmasters to order. The mission of the club, we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. At this time, please silence all electronics and pass your competent leadership manuals along to another member for evaluation during this meeting. Now please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. And welcome our Toastmaster for this morning, distinguished Toastmaster, Stephanie Bonnie Byrne. Yay! So early.
I know. Still trying to wake up, guys. Well, good morning, Lake Mary.
Good morning.
Good
You
morning.
brave, hardy souls that went out into the wet roadways. We've got Suzanna, who's said that she's running late, but she's on her way. She's one of the evaluators. And we are missing our grammarian and our counter, all who confirmed. So I'm a little puzzled here. Let's
They
see.
must still be waiting for another hour.
Oh, yeah.
For a week,
Daylight savings.
a week behind.
A week and an hour.
It's a good thing they don't work for me.
They do this morning.
Well, I'm gonna cut their wages. Meanwhile, I'm gonna talk a couple of moments as I stall the time about our theme. Our theme is daylight saving time. Is it worth it? Today doesn't seem like it. The practice of setting our clocks ahead to capture more daylight. Anybody know when it actually began or why?
Why?
I know why.
When?
I don't know when, I know why.
World War I.
One. Okay.
Actually, it was World War I. It was the Germans who wanted to conserve energy for their missiles or whatever they were doing over
World
there.
War I missiles? Cool.
Yeah. Whatever they had, the Wolverine, was that World War I? No, I don't know. Whatever they had, they wanted to conserve. So they started the practice, actually. And the rest of Europe soon followed.
We didn't
In our
find out why.
country, in our country, it was supposedly to conserve energy. But a poll showed that people liked it because it gave them the evening hours after work to do more things. The opposition, what do you think the opposition is? The main opposition to it?
Sleep.
Actually, it is school kids in the morning having to wait at the dangerous bus stops and things in the dark. Come on in, guys. Come on in.
Come in if you're good looking.
Grab a chair at near Jose.
Jorge.
Not Jorge. Oops. Because
Maybe they didn't
you
need
might have to do grammarian and our counter because I haven't
Oh,
seen.
no.
He gave us a word, but I don't see it posted out here. He didn't bring it. He's not here. Now, it's an interesting thing that it was and it still is voluntary among states. In other words, states can opt out. But can you imagine the confusion when they did that? All states participate now except for one. Any good guesses?
Indiana.
Arizona, except for is it the Navajo Nation? One of the nations participate. So think about the confusion that's going on there. Then you've got some states that are in 2 time zones. And if one part didn't participate and the other did, you could have literally a few miles apart with 2 time differences. It drove the transportation department crazy with the trains. And so Amtrak kind of forced them to come to, I think it was 1962. They all went on daylight saving time and Eastern Standard Time, or the regular time. It's also called summertime outside of the United States. Okay, so now we have technical tape. And I am going to ask our counter / grammarian to stand and tell us all those good things you're going to do for us this morning. Jorge Friggles, everybody.
Master Toastmaster, fellow Toastmaster, and honored guests. I will be fulfilling the role of counter and grammarian today. So starting out with the grammarian, the fundamental role of that position is to help members express themselves clearly and concisely. The grammarian has 2 basic responsibilities. First, introduce new words to members, and second, to comment on exceptional and proper use of the English language during the course of the meeting. Today's word of the day is radiant, which means emitting heat or light, filled with happiness, joy, or love, glowing or bright. A quote is, if you have a positive attitude and constantly strive to give your best effort, eventually you will overcome your immediate problems and find you are ready for greater... Oh wait, that's just a quote.
That's the well, okay, here we go.
He's writing in a sentence. Try to work it in. For those who don't, it'll be 25 cents at the end of the meeting. And now moving on to the counter responsibilities. The purpose of the counter is to note words and sounds used as a crutch or pregnant pause by anyone who speaks during the meeting. Words may be inappropriate interjections, such as and, well, but, so, you know, and sounds like I'll be listening for double clutches, such as I, this means, and it'll be 5 cents per infraction, and I'll give both my reports at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, guys. Alexandra, what are you going to do today? We're already behind, so help us.
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, even though it's raining, it's a radiant meeting. So the timer fundamental role is to assist the Toastmaster in keeping the meeting on a schedule. Each segment of the meeting will be timed. Speakers, you will have your assigned time that is on the agenda. Within 2 minutes remaining of your time, the green light card will be shown. Then with 1 minute remaining, the yellow card will be shown. And when you're out of time, the red card will be shown. Table topics, each person will have 1 minute to talk. And when I show the green light card, you have 30 seconds. When I show the yellow card, you have 45 seconds. And red is that's it, you have the full minute. Evaluators, you have 3 minutes to complete your assignment, and when I show the green card, you are 2 minutes remaining, yellow card, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes are done, red card. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. We have another scheduling change. If you will note on your agenda, in addition to Jorge doing double duty, had I known,
I'll do whatever you want.
All right, we have a grammarian, folks, and that is. Let me just go over.
Former president.
Immediate past president. Okay, we've already gone over the word that you're just going to capture who uses it. And the word of the day is radiant. We've done that.
Radiant.
Yeah, we've done that part already.
You are radiant this morning.
Thank you.
Hey.
And one of
You
the
want me to
schedule.
tell everybody what grammarian does?
I
Correct.
did it already.
Oh, thank you.
And we have one of the scheduling change, and we will have Jeff. Jeff Compound is going to evaluate Stephen Morgan. Okay? Make that, make
Oh, Jeff.
So just change Jessica to Jeff.
Jessica.
Jessica? Okay. Now, let's get on. Okay. Today, folks, we're being treated. We have an icebreaker. Yay!
Woman.
And
We'll see.
Diane Manikowski, she's giving her first speech. She says she's a little nervous. Do you believe that? So we're going to support her and encourage her. But she says she knows why we look forward to icebreakers. She said it's because we can begin filling up our box. But I don't think that's going to be for very long. Let's give an encouraging welcome to Diane Manikowski doing Chutes and Ladders Along the Path of My Life.
Madam Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters, and guests, thank you for listening to me today, and please be encouraging, because I'm going to do my very best, but I think I've forgotten everything I was going to say. How many of you here know the game Chutes and Ladders? Okay, for anybody who doesn't, it's a game where little children, usually like 3 and above, they have a track, they have a path that they have to go on from 1 to 100, and they go along the path. If they do good deeds or they make good decisions, sometimes they land on a ladder and they get to just jump from one place to the other. But sometimes if they don't make good decisions and they maybe are naughty, they have to go down the chute and they go back to where they started from or somewhere along the path that's before them. Today, I'm going to talk about my life, my path, and all the chutes and ladders that I've encountered along my life. So this is a little personal today. It's not really just going to be about, oh, I grew up here and I went here. It's going to be more about the lessons that I learned and where I am on my path. And I'm hoping, since I'm a teacher, I used to be a teacher, that somebody will get something out of this. So I've had a bunch of ladders, and I've had lots and lots of chutes along my way. What we have to do is when we go along the path, we have to learn who we are. We have to learn what wisdom we can get from it. We also need to have life lessons and learn our lessons, and then the really big key is to apply what we learned from those lessons to our life so that we can keep moving along the path. Now, I don't know how many of you do that, but I'm guilty of not applying what I know to my life, and not just once or twice, but over and over and over and over and over again. And I will explain it, a little bit, because I started out when I was very young, probably 6, 7, 8 years old, and I just learned the lesson just recently. So I'm going to tell you all about that. They say that when you're teaching and you're learning, that sometimes you have to hear something 2,000 times to actually have it be ingrained in you, to actually know it. Well, I've heard it more than that. And I guess I'm just stubborn. I have no idea. I'm guilty of not heeding it and just doing what I want to do. And unfortunately, that has caused problems in my life. So what I wanted to tell you is when I started out when I was a child, I had a lot of circumstances that shaped me and actually caused me to make the decisions that I made. I was a middle child. I had an older brother who's 2 years older than me, and he was the apple of my father's eye, the firstborn. Then I had a younger sister who was Bonnie, who was very cute, and she was the apple of everybody's eye. And then there was me, and I was sandwiched between them. Now, I'm not complaining because I don't think that was a bad thing for me. in effect, what happened is I became very responsible, self-sufficient. I had to do everything and keep myself entertained because nobody gave me the time of day. Because it was always about them. They always got in trouble. I never got in trouble. I was the good kid. I was the smart kid, the straight A student, you know, everything going well. But I did create a lot, which has helped me in my life. You know, I learned how to do arts and crafts and painting and building, and watched my father repair motors, and pretty much I could build a house, I can build a garden, I can make everything from scratch, cook, paint, crafts, basketry, anything you want to do. Probably because I was left alone, because I had to learn how to do that. But also because I was young and I was left alone, I had to feel lonely. And so one of the things that happened to me because I was lonely is I felt empathy for a lot of other people around, you know, in the classrooms, and when they were kind of not, you know, happy, or they were left out. Oh my goodness, I would invite them in to be with me so that they wouldn't be lonely, they wouldn't be sad. Now, along the line, what happened is that was my first experience with inviting users and takers into my life. And that is the thing that's taken me 50 years to overcome, because there's a lot of them out there. And every time I did do the users and takers, I found that my, you know, that I would always, I'd be up a long path and then I would shoot back down again because I'd get upset or whatever. In the meantime, I did have a good life. I went to college. I had a great life. I'm going up the ladder. I'm majoring in archaeology and really popular, having a great time, meet my future husband, get married, graduate, get married, go to Texas with him in the military, and then we went on to have, oh, those cards. Anyway, then we go on to have children, and I am at the top of the ladder. And at that point, I am radiant. I am excited because my life is going so well. Unfortunately, I didn't know that really I wasn't along my path. I was kind of jumping on John's ladder. That's my husband's name. So I was jumping on his ladder. Then soon after that, we had these, I had some miscarriages before that, and that was really hard. I had a lot of deaths in the family, and that was really hard. I kept going back, I kept going forward. But what I did learn, because of all those things, is I learned to appreciate the people that were in my life at the time. I learned not to say things that I might regret in my future life, you know. And then I also learned to make sure that I was there for everybody in my life. I don't want to see that sign. So my husband died. Things were very difficult. I jumped back on my path way far away. And then I met somebody who was very difficult and abusive, and I stayed right back there. I thought I was up here, and then eventually I felt like I was way back here starting all over again. An abusive man, a smart girl that's with an abusive man and not knowing how to stop it. And so what I finally found out is that I was surrounded by users and takers, by this abusive person. I jumped out of that situation, and it took me quite some time, but eventually I found that I was fine the way I was, and I got to be Diane again. And so I walked along the path again, and I decided that right here, this is the place to be. And I'm fine with who I am. I don't have to depend on anybody else. And pretty much, I hope that all of you have found your place on the path and have your goal, and that you'll be able to learn something from my speech. Thank you.
She took a lot of steps to get there, but she got there.
I'm sorry.
1 minute on the clock, please. Look at all those colored steps. That's cute.
I love it. I didn't even get it done. So.
Nice job.
Just close to the line.
I have to learn my time.
Yeah, that's
Before I
fine.
got here. Obviously, I didn't do it right.
What meeting?
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, as you see setting up, claimed he needed no introduction, and I concurred. But he'll be speaking from the Entertaining Speakers Manual, Project 2, Resources for Entertainment. Help me welcome competent communicator Paul Walsh, giving us Emotions of an Investment.
How many of you have received a hot stock tip before? How many of you have acted on that tip? Good morning, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. I want to tell you a story about Brian Wells. Brian was middle-aged and middle income. You could say he was in the middle. He had 3 kids and was barely making ends meet. Brian was anxious to make some extra money so he could get a little ahead. Maybe he could even take a vacation. One day, Brian's friend, who was an engineer, told him about this awesome biotech company called Gilead Sciences that had just received a patent and was going to shoot through the roof. The ticker symbol was GILD. Brian said he should get in. Brian's friend told him he should get in now. At the same time, Brian's other friend, a portfolio manager, told him about General Electric, that it was a good, well-diversified company and should provide decent returns over the next few years. That ticker symbol was GE. Brian took a look at both stocks, and ironically, they were both priced right around $50. So he wondered if he could get a quick return on some money. He had actually had $10,000 saved up for emergencies and paying bills, but he was wondering if he could just take that and get a quick return on one of these stocks. He decided that he liked the idea of buying a stock that was going to shoot through the roof better than decent returns. So he spent the $10,000 on GILD. At this point, Brian was optimistic about his selection. 1 week later, let's see if I can pull this off. 1 week later, Brian checked both stocks, and this was the situation. GILD had gone up 10% and GE had gone down about 3%. Brian was feeling thrilled and excited. He was wondering why he hadn't done this sooner. Brian started thinking maybe he could quit his job and do this full time. 1 month later, Brian checked again. This is what he found. GILD was up another 10%, and GE had gone down even further to a total of 5%. He was so glad he had gone with his engineering friend's advice. He started thinking about taking a vacation later in the year. He had feelings of euphoria. He was actually feeling radiant. He called his engineering friend and told him to let him know about any other stocks that he heard about. Brian started planning his vacation and decides to check again in another week, and this is what he found.
Oh.
GILD had gone down 3% while GE stayed the same. Brian started to feel a little anxiety. He told himself that a little drop was okay since he was a long-term investor. Brian tried not to think about his investment, but he decided to check once a week, and the next week, this is what he found. GILD had dropped another 3% and GE had jumped up 5%. Brian rationalized that he was still up from his original investment, so he really had not lost anything. When Brian checked again the next week, GILD had dropped 15% while GE was up 1%. Brian was now down from his original investment and wished he would have listened to his portfolio manager first. Why would he take investing advice from an engineer? Brian started worrying about losing all of his emergency money. Within 3 more weeks, GILD had dropped 15% more and GE was up 10% more. Brian went from panicking to being despondent. He swore he would never put money in the stock market again if he could just get back his money. He wondered why he was friends with that engineering guy anyway. Brian was ready to sell and try to save up the money again, but he decided to check again the next week. GILD had gone up 2% and GE went up another 2%. Brian was depressed. Why would he buy a biotech when he does not even know what a biotech is? Brian decided to wait to sell. What did he have to lose at this point? When he checked the next week, GILD had jumped up 5% and GE stayed the same. Brian thought maybe it was a temporary setback. He began to hope it would just go up a little more. The following week, the same thing happened. GILD jumped another 5% and GE stayed the same. Brian was so relieved he was almost back to break even. If he just got back to break even, he promised he would sell and he had learned his lesson. A couple weeks later, Brian checked and GILD was back to 50. He was back to break even. He was so relieved. As Brian got ready to sell GILD, he wondered if it would still go up a little more. He began to be optimistic about his possibilities. Fellow Toastmasters, how many of you can relate to Brian? What Brian went through is known as the cycle of market emotions. Is there a lesson here? I think the first lesson is to have a plan. A plan is not make a little money and get out. The second lesson is not to invest with money that you can't afford to lose. Brian needed this money for emergencies. So I'd like to leave you all with a quote that you should keep in mind when you're considering a stock for an investment. A stock is like an airplane. It's better to be on the ground and wishing you were on the plane than on the plane wishing you were on the ground.
1 minute on the clock, please. Boy, are we pressed for time. Let's see. Decisions. I won't talk anymore about daylight saving time. You can read some ditties on the back of your agenda. So I probably will tell you one quick one. They say how difficult it is for drivers to make the adjustment and all of the accidents that ensue, you know, as that time changes in the evening. I had cats, and they ate at 7 o'clock. But when the time went back, for them, it was time to eat. But I'm like, it's not time yet. You know, You have to wait. They were furious. They wanted to eat on time. Where are we? I'm gonna do the steps. Ready? All right.
1 minute.
Okay. Our final speaker, ladies and gentlemen. He first joined Toastmasters in 1997. In his 16 years, Stephen has been a member of 7 clubs. A member of Lake Mary Toastmasters since October 2002. Wow. A professional software engineer, Java programmer, and hypnotist, Stephen is also known for his singing, gaming, and love of competing in speech contests. Today he is here to stretch your minds. Please welcome Advanced Toastmaster Gold, Stephen Morgan, with the Wheels of Justice.
The wheels of justice turn slowly, but grind finely. I have 3 stories to tell, little anecdotes. They don't prove anything, but the idea is to get you to think a little bit differently about the way the system we know might work from other perspectives. The first was one that was reported in the Riverfront Times in Missouri. It's about the story of Cornelius Michael Anderson III. He was 36 years old, owned a construction business. He had a wife. They had 4 kids between them. He was home one evening with his daughter, who was 2, when the place was stormed by U.S. Marshals. And they dragged him away while he's crying out, "You've got the wrong guy." But as it turned out, they didn't actually have the wrong guy. What had happened is that 13 years before, almost 14, when he was much younger, he was involved in a robbery. He had been caught. Some of his conspirators were just trying to stonewall the authorities. He was trying to cooperate until he realized that they were going to try and get him 10 years when he was hoping to get probation. When he realized that, he said, never mind, and went to trial, and at trial ended up getting convicted and getting 13 years in jail as a sentence. He appealed. In fact, the prosecutor had used evidence from the search of his apartment that they found a flyer that for a handgun. They didn't find a handgun. They used the flyer as evidence, and they were making an issue of that on appeal. And although they ended up losing a first set of appeals, he ended up trying a second set. But while on appeal, he bonded out. So he had paid the $25,000 his father had paid. He was out on appeal while they went through the appeals process. Well, when the second set of appeals started to occur, his lawyer had gone into the hearing. Cornelius had not gone with him. When his lawyer had said that he was actually out on bond, the prosecutor got up and said, no, he is not. He's actually still in jail. He had the address listed as the prison. The system thought he was still in jail. What had happened, though he lost that appeal, nobody issued a warrant. Nobody came back to get him. He did not hide. He did not run. He went and got married. He started a business. He was teaching kids football. He was going to church. And 13 years later, when the system came up and said, he's supposed to be released now, they went to the prison, found out he wasn't there. Issued the warrant, and ended up in him being stormed in his own house and being sent to jail where they're expecting him to sit for another 13 years. That's how the system worked. The other that you may have heard about, which has probably been a lot more notorious of late, is of Ethan Couch, as was being reported in pretty much any media outlet you choose. He's at 16 years old, got into a car accident. He had had 7 passengers. He hit a car on the side of the road that had been disabled, killing the young woman who'd been driving and the 3 people who had stopped to help her. He was tested, found drunk, above .24, and Valium in his system. Being 16, this went to juvenile court, and he pled guilty to intoxication, manslaughter, intoxication, assault. The sentence that was handed down from the judge was 10 years probation, no jail time, and rehab at a facility that was going to cost $450,000 a year. They didn't expect the taxpayers to pay for it. His parents did, because they could. You've probably heard about this one, because it has been going about, and the outrage that came out that you could kill 4 people, put 2 others in the hospital paralyzed, and not get any jail time at all. Because the defense that they put forward was that his parents had spoiled him so badly that he didn't know right from wrong. Did not understand the consequences of his actions. The third story that I have to tell is about Ray Jasper. He was convicted of a robbery murder in Texas 19 years ago and is scheduled for execution tomorrow. As though he himself claims that he did not actually cause the murder, he was part of a robbery, and since the robbery ended up in a murder, he was charged. And although the person he said did cause it pled out to avoid the death sentence, he ended up getting it. I'm not trying to argue the merits of whether he did or did not, but what is interesting was what I discovered recently. Gawker is an online magazine. They had started a series of letters from people on death row, trying to get the perspective of these people who are definitely in a different place than the rest of us are. They were surprised at the eloquence of his first letter. They asked for a second one. And in his second one, realizing that this could very well be the last thing that he ever writes, his last word, he ended up writing a very long-winded letter with a lot of very interesting insights. The most interesting of which I found was about empathy. And by all means, take one, pass around. Realizing that this is somebody who has spent half his life on death row, the perspectives that he brings forward are quite insightful in so many ways. But the one that I found most interesting was his description of empathy. As he describes, means putting the shoe on the other foot. Or as another way, a rich man would look at a poor man not with sympathy, feeling sorrow for their poverty, and not with contempt, feeling disdain for their impoverished state, but with empathy, which means that the rich man would put himself in the poor man's shoes, feel what the poor man is feeling, and understand what it is to be the poor man. It's something that we actually do here when you think about when you get up to evaluate. We've all gone up and given speeches. And as the evaluator, you can put yourself in that place and realize the kind of things that we want to give each other are the things we each need. So to understand each other and the importance of that. So a few different anecdotes for you to think about. There is a lot more to the system that we know. But the wheels of justice do keep turning. So you just happen to know which direction they're going. Thank you.
We have 1 minute, Alexander, please. Sure. For evaluations. Be sure to fill out your evaluation sheets. Speakers need them. You want them. One question. One question. As you can see, we are out of time. But I know that Gus Davies is so eager to give us this one question.
1 minute.
So let's indulge him. Gus Davies.
Thank you, man.
Toastmaster. In order for us to have this one question, which is going to be very difficult where I'm going to land it, because I want whoever answers that question to walk out into a radiant day. Tell me, what has been your experience when you had to spring forward in time, or you had to fall back when the time changed, if you were living in a country that is 7 hours ahead of the United States? James.
I was excited about this question because I have a very, very unique experience in this life. I have lived 10 years in Okinawa, Japan. And in that time, it was separated by a long span of my life where I was in college and I would have to leave twice a year. I was forced. Had military orders signed by President Bush, still have them framed, but where I was forced to go home twice a year. Well, twice a year that always generally occurred when time change, or right around time change. First of all, as a college kid, you know many adult beverages are consumed, and you look forward to time change because it gives you an extra hour in the bar. When traveling 12 hours was my time difference, it was extremely jet lagged. So what I used to do was I would drink tons of energy drinks, stay up on the entire flight, on the way there, be exhausted, force yourself to stay up. So at this point now I'm up for 48 straight hours. And then you finally get to sleep and you're completely in rhythm with everyone in Japan. And on the way back, you take a sleeping pill, you go to sleep, you sleep the entire 17 hours of flight, and then you land and you're in sync with everybody again. So that is my unique perspective on time change during daylight savings.
Thank you.
Moving right along, I'm going to call our master evaluator, the radiant and often loquacious, but not this morning, but the technique. Do it quick, buddy.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. We'll now proceed to the evaluation portion of the program by calling on Suzanna K., our marvelous evaluator, who's going to evaluate Diane Manikowski.
Thank you, Master Evaluator. Yes, Master Evaluator. It's early still. Fellow Toastmasters, especially Diane. Wow, Diane, I am so glad that at 6:56 when I woke up, I forced myself to run here. That was so fun. Yes. What a fun speech. You absolutely made my morning. I loved it. You brought some great skills to the table on your first speech. You enunciate beautifully. Your volume is wonderful. I had no problem hearing you or understanding you at that back of the room, which, when people get nerves, a lot of times is the first thing to go. All of a sudden they talk like this and I have no clue what they're saying. Fantastic job with that. I also really enjoyed that at the beginning, you admitted that you had nerves, and that endeared you to us. Because we've all done the icebreaker and we've all thought, I might not live through this. We understood. We were right there with you. We connected with you. I would not say that every time you have a speech, but for an icebreaker, it did really work very well for you. I enjoyed that. A little bit later on, you even caught yourself. At first, when you lost your place, you said, oh geez, but then you caught yourself and you did exactly what you're supposed to do. And you went on. That's exactly right. Perfect. So you brought some really good things to the table, automatically. Got that? Yeah.
She on herself.
I loved that your story showed us not only that you have a big heart, but why. You explained the reasoning behind why you feel that way towards other people. And that really, it touched my heart because I can completely relate and I just was there with you. So you had a great message. You told us what you were going to say. You told us, and then you wrapped it up with what you just said. Great delivery. Like I said, the only thing that I could possibly think of is just the don't call yourself out when you forget something. Do exactly like you did after you realized that you'd done it. Just pause and keep going because we don't know. We've got no clue what word you're on, what you're missing. Just go with it. But you brought this radiance to the group, and this hopefully is another step up your ladder. I loved it. Thank you very much.
That was a great evaluation by a great evaluator of a great speech maker. Shouldn't use that. Okay, we'll now call on Kerri Bird, who will charm us by evaluating Paul Walsh.
Master Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Paul, for the many times that I've evaluated, as we discovered today. I really enjoyed your speech. I loved the whole story. I found that you did amuse us with what your investor was thinking with once he found his stock going down and not doing very well. One of the other things for this evaluation, it was the theme of the message. I think it was very good, and I liked that you left it all the way to your closing. I thought that was very good, and that the theme, which was, have a plan, and also don't invest money that you don't have to lose. And that's the same with lending. Don't do that. Especially family. There's only a couple things that I think maybe work on. With this speech in particular, it may have been a little more impactful if you didn't read so much of your notes. That was the only thing. But however, on the other hand, I loved that you put the charts up. I thought that was one of the things that you did the best because it was very easy for people to follow what the stock market was doing. And the one other thing, your hand sometimes, I know I do this, hand sometimes don't know what to do, and you were fiddling with your belt a lot. But other than that, I thought it was a fantastic speech. I think that, I don't know, it was really good. I really liked it.
Okay, we'll now call on Jeff to evaluate Stephen Morgan.
And Stephen, for nominating me for my icebreaker evaluation. But, not having done this, I really tried to pay close attention to the questions that were being asked and the purpose of the speech. And while right before you got up, I did a quick search on the Wheels of Justice, and the visuals that I was given in terms of a courtroom, it was consistent. So good title, consistent examples. And so for this speech, he was supposed to use a lot of examples, a lot of research. It was supposed to demonstrate that you researched your topic thoroughly. So from that perspective, everything was accomplished. Now, you've clearly been doing this a long time, so all of the normal stuff that we probably catch ourselves on, you were engaged, you were out here, you were talking to us, and all of that is something that we've grown to expect. I mean, I haven't been in this club for very long, but you just kind of assume that he's going to do a great job, and right? So clearly he researched it. These are court cases, so a lot of research has to take place. The three examples that you used are the three stories. I like them, and in trying to look for areas of how I would change it. Now my comments are based also, I'm comparing you to like a TED speaker. If you've been to TED.com, right? Those guys are are the most accomplished people in their field, so the stick is high, right? Well, I was looking at you because I go, Stephen's very experienced. I liked all 3 examples. The first one was my favorite. That one seemed like the plot of a movie, in a way. And I would have ended with that one, because you had me there. I was engaged. I wanted actually to hear like a little bit more. I also liked the reference to Gawker, because when I was reading the note to the evaluator in terms of looking for numerous resources, I was made notes to myself, like where was he looking? Social media, internet, where was he getting his information? So when you shared that, that also had me engaged. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Because if you're giving really good examples like that, sometimes it's good to share where you're getting those. For me anyways, those 2 things, if you would have ended with that first story, or had more stories like that one, because those, again, kind of tie to what you can associate to something you may have seen in the movie. I like that. And in terms of body language and vocal variety, your style works for you. I mean, clearly, anytime we get up here, we can emphasize more and be more animated, but I think your style works for you. So, you know, unless you wanted to be more dramatic, you could have, I guess, with some of them. And I think that is all I have to say.
We'll now ask our functionary table to give the report, starting with Alexandra, the timer.
Mr. Evaluator, we have our speakers today, Diane. She used 8 minutes and 26 seconds.
You paid your balance.
Yeah. Mr. Paul, 7 minutes 33 seconds, and Stephen, 7 minutes 39 seconds. Then we have table topics, James, 1 minute 23 seconds. Evaluator Suzanne, 2 minutes 59 seconds. Kerri, 1 minute 53 seconds. And Jessica, 3 minutes 11 seconds. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy and Alexandra. You keep us laughing. We'll now ask our second functionary, our counter, to give us a report. That will be Mr. Jorge Friedel.
Today's odd counter report. Diane, you're doing really good until you saw the cards. You're really on a good pace. It's 7 uhs, 9 ums, 2 nos, 2 sos, 3 double clutches, but it doesn't count for icebreakers.
Oh, it doesn't.
So,
Thank you.
Next week.
Paul just had 1 pause. I just had a Steven, Stephanie, James, and Gus were all clean, unless I was just zoned out. I'm sorry. Suzanna, 1 and 1 Bud was also clean so far. Kerri, 3 ums and an I don't know. a new category. Jeff, 1 1 2 likes, 2 you knows, 2 sos, 2 double clutches. And Alexandra, 1 and that's the report for today.
Before I ask the grammarian to give a report, I'd like to tell you a quick story about the lady who wrote to her congressman to complain about daylight saving time. She claimed that the radiant sun had made her grass turn brown.
That actually did happen. That is awful.
Now we'll have a report by past president Linda Schoonover.
In the interest of time, I'm just going to share who used the word of the day. That would be Bud, Gus, Diane, Paul, and James. No,
Not me.
not James.
Yeah,
Well, I probably didn't hear you.
yeah, that's before.
Okay.
Suzanne did.
Suzanne did.
Anyone, and you, but I didn't hear you. Okay. No. So, anyone else owes money, right?
Thank you, Madam Grammarian. in view of the fact that we're running a little behind time, I think the Toastmaster would like me to go ahead and wrap it up. Okay, but I do want to say a quick word about our table topics master, who had the guts and the foresight to call on a guest for the one trivial table topic, and also the guest who performed admirably.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd now like to turn our meeting over to our president, Mr. Stephen Morgan, the Honorable.
Thank you, Bud. Another meeting down, and with a lot of real push, we managed to get to this point before we hit 8:30. Next week's schedule, as listed, Suzanna, you are Toastmaster.
Oh,
Can
sure.
you do that? Okay.
Why not?
Any idea for theme yet?
Do I need to call a meeting?
How about oversleeping? That's my theme.
Okay.
It's on my mind.
Scheduled as speakers are Pablo, Jessica, and Jorge. I expect Jessica will not be. Jorge, will you be speaking next week?
Come on.
You scheduled it, so you're not ready.
Sure.
Okay. Paul, your schedule is table topics master.
I'm not gonna be here
Not
next.
going to be here.
I can
Ernst
take
is
that
listed
one.
as general evaluator.
I can take that one.
Alex,
Okay, you want
topic.
topic master? Ernst is general evaluator. The evaluators listed are Julia, myself, and Bud. Bud, are you going to be here to do evaluating?
Of course I will.
Okay, I can do that. Grammarian and Gus.
Yes, I'll be here.
Joe is listed as timer, and Jeff, you're listed as out counter.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone want the open speaking slot that is available?
Take it.
What is it? Okay, I'll take
You
it.
want to speak again?
Sure, this time I'm not looking at
Bravo,
I'm looking at everybody else. Never look at the time.
So we're set on that. Jorge, if we can have a new schedule for next week, I
Yes.
certainly do not expect Arbonne to be Toastmaster on the 1st.
Oh, okay.
because it's April Fool's Day.
We haven't seen her since she got too busy and since she isn't back yet.
Yes, okay.
As still set, the area contest is March 30th, 1 p.m. Lake Mary Library.
Go see Steve. Okay.
When is it?
On March 30th.
Yep, Sunday the 30th.
On Sunday 30th. And Julia will be doing table topics.
Yay.
The winners go to division on April 27th, and those winners will be at the district conference on May 16th and 17th. The cost for the district conference has already gone up to $119. It's right here, Lake Mary. By all means, if you can go,
A
go.
lot of fun. A lot of fun.
If nothing else, the international speech contest on Saturday nights more than worth the cost of the whole conference itself, since the dinner along comes with it. So take a look at it, send that information about. Any other announcements?
Dues.
The business?
Dues.
Oh, I totally
Give me your checks.
On to do.
Checks. 98.
Need them in now.
Need them now. Give me money. Give me money.
I'm doing my first webinar on Wednesday. If anybody wants to pass that on to friends who want to learn time management. It's my first time, so.
I host 3 a day, 90 minutes each.
We need to talk.
We need a new manual for those.
Yes.
For webinars.
Yes, anything, yeah, I've been quite bored with just about everyone I've been on.
Yeah. They can be good or they can most of them wrong.
Anything else to be for now? If not, we are on time, and let's
All
get
right.
on time next week.
Yes.